Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mairead Fleming and I'm Managing Director of Brightwater, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here to our inaugural IT event here in such prestigious surroundings. We work with leading firms across the whole island of Ireland, and in doing so, we ascertained that there was a real need to hold a forum in which we could invite leading technology speakers to host and talk at an event like this.
So now for our first speaker of this evening, we're delighted to introduce Simon Ritter, who's a technology evangelist at Oracle Corporation, and he's going to be talking this evening about what's happening with Java. So please can we welcome Simon.
Good evening, welcome. I've got to say this is one of the more interesting places that I've presented in the past. Certainly going to be something to tell people about in the future. Now, what I want to do this evening is to give you an overview of where we're at with Java at the moment. So what it is that Oracle are doing in terms of the future of Java. So let's look very briefly at what's going to happen beyond Java SE8. What ideas are we looking at? So there's various things around interoperability, multi-language JVMs, improved Java native integration. So we're actually talking about rewriting JNI to make it easier to use. Possible advanced optimizations. Again, please understand these are just ideas. So we're actually discussing the concept of should we reach a point where we say with Java, we will break backwards compatibility. We will make some massive changes to the language that will upset lots of existing code. And one of those ideas is, should we drop primitives from Java? Should we make Java fully object-oriented? So with Java EE, we're focusing on platform as a service. And what we're going to do is include a lot of APIs that address the needs of cloud computing. So we're going to use things like the idea of elasticity. How can we change the resources that are being made available to a particular application as the application is running? So that we can change the resources, we can grow as the load changes, we can shrink as the load changes. So just to conclude then, basically Java is continuing to move forward. JavaFX, as I said, is an interesting thing that potentially is going to be included in Java SE8 around replacing Swing and AWT as the primary way of developing user interfaces in Java.
Technology at the heart of the business then. This is, I think, is absolutely what it's about. And what I want to do is try and go out there and impress upon people that doing things the same that we've always done is actually not a very safe strategy. This is actually about doing things slightly different. This is embracing risk. This is about getting out there and doing really great things with IT, but you can only do that well if you are able to demonstrate the traits of a true professional, i.e., you know what you are talking about. You're engaged in continuous professional development. You are coming to things like this and learning about Java. You're getting at the forefront of what it is to be good and great at your job. So the last thing I would say is that the IT profession needs role models. I think it's incredibly important that we celebrate role models and we recognize role models.
And the winner is Colin McGoldrick.
But now, without further ado, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Mark Little for our final presentation. He's CTO of JBoss at Red Hat, and he will be talking about middleware and cloud technology.
There we go. Welcome. I've said before this event started that I've spoken in a number of places throughout the world. I don't think I've spoken anywhere quite as grand as this. However, despite this, if you look at what I've just mentioned about things like the BeagleBoard, things like the Raspberry Pi, and your mobile phone, actually both public cloud and private cloud are in some ways obsoleted by what was originally called back in 2000 ubiquitous computing and is now really ubiquitous computing. Back in 2000, the likes of HP and IBM were talking about devices everywhere. where your light bulb would have an IP address, your fridge would have an IP address, your cooker would have an IP address, and it would have a processor in it that you would be able to use, to utilize. And finally, on the cloud bit, thin clients, the type of cloud that we're working on today, really assume thin clients. They assume everything is running on the cloud, and you'll access things through your web browser. Unfortunately, that is not sufficient to allow cloud to scale. The reason that cloud works today is that not everybody uses it. As more and more people use it, as the complexity of applications that are on it increases, as the amount of data that is exchanged between the end user and the cloud increases, we're going to run into something called Shannon's limit. Shannon's limit places a limit on the amount of information that can be reliably transmitted over any given medium. And what this means is that as soon as everybody in the world starts to use cloud, which is obviously what we as an industry really want, the whole thing's going to grind to a halt. So what does this mean? It means that I think middleware is needed wherever you're developing your applications. We shouldn't be thinking that middleware is not needed on a mobile device or on cloud, just because they're not traditional arenas for things like a Java EE6 application server or an enterprise middleware application server. So, in conclusion, I think the next decade will be defined by ubiquitous computing, and I group mobile and cloud into that. They will evolve. They will evolve to have this cloud where maybe you are being able to tie into your fridge and get it to rip DVDs. What hopefully I've shown you is that enterprise middleware requirements, whether it's the latest Call of Duty implementation or whether it's running your application on the cloud, these enterprise requirements are not going to go away. You may not recognize them as your favorite EE6 implementation app server, but whether it's transactions, security, whether it's caching, whether it's clustering, these are capabilities that have been around for some of them for 4 decades or more, and they are core to pretty much every middleware wave that we have seen over the last four decades. Mobile and cloud don't obviate those facts. In fact, in many ways, they exacerbate the problems that those capabilities were developed to solve. There are other areas that need to be addressed. It's a very, very interesting time to be involved with enterprise middleware and certainly to be involved with Java and the JVM. If you were thinking about moving away from this because you thought Java was dead, then think again. Whether it's Dalvik or something else, I think Java on a mobile device is inevitable. It's kind of where Java started, believe it or not. It was developed for constrained devices back in '96.